Welcome back to our channel. In today's video, there are 3 short scary stories that I want to share. This first one is a personal experience that completely changed my beliefs about ghosts and demons. Let's begin. The first scary story. Ghosts and demons. Growing up, my mom always said I had a weak soul. When my grandmother, who I was very close to, died, my mother didn't even let me go and say goodbye one last time. I never thought ghosts or demons were real because I've never experienced them before. That was until I opened my third eye. My mother had always tied me a red and white thread. She always told me it was to keep me safe from demonic things that wanted to get attached to me, but I was never one to listen, so I just agreed and would leave her. Well, I recently moved in with my boyfriend and started my career in healthcare. I worked in a nursing home and ended up having to cut the red and white thread because I was dealing with bodily fluids, so it wasn't hygienic. Little did I know it was the start of something I wouldn't wish on anyone else. I worked in the dementia unit, so having my residents tell me a lot of crazy things was nothing new. I often went ahead and cared for them as directed. The work was good, and yes, it was hard, but the hardest part was watching them finally die. My first experience with a dying person was terrifying. Everyone who worked on my unit knew that resident I was eventually leaving. He stopped eating and started sleeping more. He often talked to himself and muttered under his breath that his deceased family was in the room with him. I was just working in her section and changing her diaper and clothes, and I moved to Nurse B. She was paralyzed from the waist down and confined to a wheelchair. She wanted me to give her a shower, so I did. As I bathed her and talked to her, she froze and stared at my side. She looked terrified and muttered under her breath that she was scared because someone was staring at her. I turned around to see if a resident was back in the shower hallway and was trying to peek into the bathroom we were in, which was unlikely because they are terrified of water, but nobody was there. I shivered the rest of the time and felt someone watching me from behind. I quickly finished help her bathed, dressed her, put her back in the chair and pushed her towards her room. When I opened the door and a little light from the hallway illuminated her room, I saw something run from her closet to the darkest corner of her room. I turned on the light and checked everything from her closet, under her bed, and even in the bathroom she had in his room, but no one was there. By then I was terrified, as was resident A. I put her to bed and said good night and ran out of the room. For the rest of my shift, I felt this heavy, dark vibe. I did my final round and everyone was clean and in bed. Resident A was still sleeping and breathing well at the time, so I gathered my belongings from the night the nurse arrived and we exchanged reports. After taking out the rubbish and packing my belongings to leave, the nurse took me aside in the evening and informed me that resident A had sadly passed away. Then it hit me. The reason I felt the way I felt and saw those things was because resident A was about to die. My mom always told me that when someone is near death, other spirits tend to stay and try to inhabit the body or help the spirit cross over. After this experience, I started noticing things at home. I think I really brought the unwanted spirits home, but that's another story for another day. So that's my personal experience with ghosts and demons. It's a scary world out there, and sometimes we need to be prepared for what may come. Have you ever had any experiences with ghosts or demons? Let me know in the comments below. Now to the second scary story. Someone behind. Let's begin. This story is a chilling one about a dream that will leave you questioning what's real and what's not. In this dream, a girl finds herself being followed by some strange creatures with a thirst for energy. Let's dive in. In this dream, I was out at night with my mother and a friend. We stopped to use a public restroom and continued our walk. As I was walking out of the bathroom, I noticed a girl walking right behind me. Her long black hair covered all of her face as she looked down. She was dressed all in black in a short, puffy dress that looked like something out of an anime convention. I whispered to my friend, "Do you see the girl right behind me?" My friend turned to see her. Then he turned to look at me without saying a word. He started to look extremely tired and didn't seem to care at all. We kept walking, but the girl was still behind. I started to notice that I was slowly walking away from my friend when I felt the girl was too close behind me. I asked my friend, "Hey, what are you doing? Come here." I tried to get close to him, but I couldn't reach him. He didn't seem to care, and it seemed like he could barely open his eyes. I turned to look at the girl behind me again to see what was going on because I was so confused. It lifted its head and stuck out its long tongue like a snake or a lizard as it looked at me with its pale grayish skin. My heart started pounding at this point, not knowing what to do. Then, I saw other girls walking past her with pale grayish skin. They stuck out their long tongues, as did the girl behind me. One of the other girls who was also sticking out her long tongue was holding a girl who looked extremely tired. She was like she was taking all the energy out of that girl. I started yelling at my friend for help, but he kept ignoring me. I kept yelling, "Help me! Help me!" but he kept walking because he looked extremely exhausted. The girl behind me was holding me so tight I couldn't go anywhere. Somehow, I was able to see a different portal as I walked. In that portal, I could see my friend in a panic as he hugged me, repeatedly calling my name. He looked unconscious, as if he'd been knocked out, with his eyes rolling back. I was so confused as to why my friend was panicking on that side, and on my side, he looked too tired and like he didn't care. I started yelling at my friend on the other end, "I'm here. Help me! I'm here," but he wasn't looking in my direction. I don't think he was able to hear me. I kept crying and panicking, trying to wake my unconscious body. Then the girl behind me said, "If you don't wake up, you'll be one of us." I felt my heart pounding, not knowing how to get rid of her. In a split second, I started seeing nothing but darkness. I was actually trying to wake up, but my eyes felt closed. I was struggling to open my eyes, and I could feel the pain. Shortly after, I managed to free myself and woke up with my heart pounding. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more thrilling content. And if you have any similar experiences or stories, share them with us in the comments below. Now to our final scary story. The Heartbreak Brother. The heartbreaking story of a young man who was influenced by gangs at a very young age. He and his brother were involved in drug dealing and car thefts to make ends meet. But one night, everything changed, and his brother's life was taken away. What happened that night, and how did he cope with the pain of losing his older brother? Let's begin. At a young age, my older brother and I were influenced by gangs. Growing up in an environment with cousins and friends who had ties to the same gang, we bonded at a young age, dealing drugs, stealing cars, and selling them for profit to provide what my parents couldn't afford for us and the younger children. My brother was the eldest and I was the second. We did everything together. Our parents spoke little English and worked as vegetable pickers for the farms. They worked hard for a living, were never at home, and earned enough to make ends meet. As we got older, gang problems got violent. Before I knew it, my brother and I were already teenagers and he had a girlfriend. They have dated since high school, and I would often get jealous because my brother and I had such a close bond. Since they have been dating, he has started dating her more than me, which has been bugging me. I felt like I wasn't strong without him by my side, and a lot of people respected that. He was quite well known, and I was just his brother. One summer day after my brother's high school graduation, my friends and my brother threw a house party to celebrate his accomplishments. I was there too, but when night fell, I remembered that I had to take my mother to the doctor's appointment the next day, so I told my brother that I would go home and get some sleep to wake up early. Day after. He told me to go home and take a walk with some of the guys or call his girlfriend to pick him up later. Got home and remembered it was about 9:30 p.m. I took a shower and fell asleep in my bed. Around midnight, I received a call from my brother. I woke up from my sleep and answered the call. She asked me where I was. I told him I was sleeping. Then he asked me if he could pick it up because something happened. He looked very worried. I jumped out of bed and said I'd be right there. As I approached my friend's house, I saw a swarm of police cars and ambulances. I decided to drive because the police blocked the streets and alleys where my friend's house was. As I drove, I was calling my brother, but he wasn't returning my calls, so I slowly drove down the next alley to see if he would call me back. In the dark, I saw my brother in my headlights. He was covered in blood and I was horrified at what I was seeing. He came to my door, she opened it and told us to go home. I asked him what happened and if he was okay. He said he was fine and that we should just go home. When we got home, my parents woke up to the lights and the hustle and bustle of us entering the house. My father was surprised by my brother covered in blood and he started lecturing my brother and me. My mom was scolding in the background, but my dad was furious. My brother told the old man that he was sorry and that he loved my father. He went to his room and closed the door. My father turned to me and started yelling, but I ignored him too and went back to my room. Around 3 o'clock, there was a knock on our door. I woke up frustrated that I woke up so many times already and got up to open the door. To my surprise, the cops were there. I asked them what they wanted. They told me I had to talk to my parents and asked if they were at home. I raised my parents and the cops asked to enter. Then they told my parents to sit down and mine did. Finally, the two officers sat down and told my parents that they were sorry to report, but that my older brother was dead. I told the officers no. My brother slept in his room. After interpreting for my father, he also told them they must have been wrong. Curious, my mother and I entered my brother's room to see if he was sleeping there. When the door opened, my mother fell crying when she realized my brother was not in her bed. I was surprised and did not understand. My father ran inside and was silent. I ran back to the officers and asked them when and how it had happened. Officers said coroners at the scene pronounced my brother dead at around 12 p.m. I told the officers it couldn't be because I brought my brother home not too long ago. The agents and I went through the whole story, but it didn't add up. At my brother's funeral, I remember him in great pain. During the night of the party, a rival gang went on a shootout. My brother was beaten and ran away. He died of his injuries a block from where I swear I picked him up. When we got their things back, I checked their phone calls and they called me at 12 o'clock. Strangely, I didn't understand what really happened and neither did my parents. At his funeral, his girlfriend cried and screamed sadly in pain. She stopped over her coffin and rested her head on her chest. I cried seeing her and my brother as they both were. Sometimes in the middle of the night my mother would wake her up because she was sleeping, leaning against my brother's coffin. When she woke up, my mother was surprised to see that there was a drop of blood in the middle of her forehead. My mom told her to go clean and she kept doing it. Not long after my brother's funeral, my family received word that my brother's girlfriend was not feeling very well. Time passed and she got sick every day. Her family performed spiritual ceremonies for her, but it seemed that it does not work. She started losing a lot of weight and her hair started falling out. She would tell her mom she was seeing my brother, and it's almost time for her to go too. Unfortunately, a few days before she died, she told her family that she and my brother had vows and they used blood from their fingers to seal the vows. Honestly, it still saddens me to this day that my brother and his girlfriend are gone, but I'm glad they're happy together and will always be happy. To this day, my parents believe that his spirit has come home to say goodbye. After all, it wasn't just me who saw him that night. Losing a loved one is never easy, especially when it happens suddenly and violently. This young man's story reminds us of the devastating consequences of gang violence and the importance of breaking the cycle. Let us remember his brother's life and hope that his story inspires others to choose a different path. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next time. Be safe.